The ocean was quiet. Too quiet. Across the endless blue of the Pacific Ocean, nothing moved but slow rolling waves and distant wind. No engines. No gunfire. No warning. But beneath that silence, something massive was already unfolding, something that would shatter the balance of World War II in a matter of minutes. It was June 1942, and Japan believed victory was within reach. Their navy had dominated the Pacific for months. Their strategy was bold, calculated, and nearly flawless. Strike Midway, lure out the remaining American fleet, destroy it completely, and secure total control of the ocean. It was a plan built on confidence, on momentum, on the belief that nothing could stop them now. Far out at sea, four powerful carriers advanced with purpose. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu. These were not ordinary ships. They were the core of Japan's striking power, veterans of earlier victories, symbols of dominance that had helped cripple enemy fleets before they could react. Everything pointed to success. But there was one thing Japan did not know. The Americans were waiting. Hidden beyond the horizon, U.S. forces had already cracked Japanese naval codes. They knew Midway was the target. They knew when the attack would come. And instead of retreating, they chose to prepare. 3 American carriers, USS Enterprise, USS Hornet, and USS Yorktown, lay in silent ambush, positioned carefully, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The trap was set. At dawn, the Japanese launched their first wave. Aircraft roared into the sky in tight formation, engines screaming as they climbed and turned toward Midway. Bombers carried destructive payloads. Fighters provided cover. Every movement was precise, rehearsed, confident. Then the attack began. Explosions tore across Midway Island. Fire and smoke erupted as bombs struck runways, fuel depots, and defensive positions. The island shook under the impact. From above, it looked like devastation. But it wasn't enough. Midway did not fall. American anti-aircraft guns filled the sky with fire. Fighters rose to intercept. Resistance held. The damage was serious, but not decisive. And that created a problem the Japanese hadn't planned for. They needed a second strike. On board the carriers, tension built quickly. Returning pilots reported that Midway was still operational. Orders were issued to prepare another attack. Weapons began to change. Torpedoes were removed. Bombs were loaded. Aircraft were repositioned. Fuel lines remained open. The decks became crowded, busy, dangerously exposed. And in that critical moment of preparation, everything slowed. Because while Japan focused on Midway, something else was happening far beyond their sight. American aircraft were already in the air. They had launched earlier than expected. They had flown farther than planned. And now they were searching. The first American attack came low and direct. Torpedo bombers approached the Japanese fleet in a straight line, flying dangerously close to the water. They had no fighter cover. No protection. It was a desperate move. Japanese fighters responded instantly. They dove down, fast and aggressive. Gunfire tore through the sky. One by one, American planes were hit. Engines burst into flames. Wings broke apart. Aircraft plunged into the ocean. It was devastating. A near total loss. But it forced a reaction. Japanese fighters stayed low, chasing the threat, focused entirely on the torpedo bombers. And that created an opening. High above the chaos, unseen and unchallenged, another group of American aircraft arrived. Dive bombers. They had been searching for hours, fuel running low, hope fading. Then suddenly they found them. Below, the Japanese carriers were fully exposed. Aircraft lined the decks. Fuel hoses stretched across open surfaces. Bombs and torpedoes were scattered, ready for loading. The entire fleet was caught in a moment of vulnerability. They didn't know it yet. They didn't see what was coming. Then the dive began. American planes tipped downward, steep and fast. Air rushed past their wings as gravity pulled them toward the target. Engines roared. Pilots locked in. There was no turning back. Below, Japanese crews looked up. Too late. Bombs fell. Seconds stretched into something unbearable. Then impact. Explosions tore through the carriers with overwhelming force. Flames erupted instantly. Fuel ignited. Decks shattered. The entire fleet was thrown into chaos in a matter of moments. Kaga was struck first, its deck consumed by fire as explosions spread rapidly through its structure. Akagi suffered a devastating hit, flames racing across its surface, igniting fuel and ammunition. Soryu was overwhelmed by multiple explosions, smoke rising high into the sky as the ship burned uncontrollably. 3 carriers.
Gone.
Within minutes. The scale of destruction was unbelievable. Orders were shouted across decks, now engulfed in fire. Fire crews rushed to contain the damage, but the flames spread too quickly. Secondary explosions ripped through the ships as stored munitions ignited. Control was lost. The impossible had happened. Japan's most powerful naval force had been shattered in a single, perfectly timed strike. Shock spread instantly. Officers struggled to understand what had just occurred. Pilots returning to land saw their carriers burning, disappearing beneath smoke and flame. Confusion turned into realization. This was not a setback.
This was disaster.
But the battle was not over. 1 carrier remained.
Hiryu.
And unlike the others, it was still operational, still armed, still ready to fight. Within minutes, Hiryu launched a counterattack. Aircraft surged into the sky, heading straight for the American fleet. This time, the element of surprise belonged to Japan. They found their target. USS Yorktown. Bombs struck with precision. Explosions rocked the deck. Fires broke out. The carrier slowed, damaged but not destroyed. Crews rushed to contain the damage. For a moment, it looked like Yorktown might be lost. But they fought back. Repairs were made quickly. Smoke cleared. The ship remained in the fight. And that stunned the Japanese pilots. They believed they had destroyed it. They returned to Hiryu, reported success, and prepared for another strike. But time was running out. Because somewhere above them, American aircraft were already returning. Searching again. Hunting again. And this time,
they would find Hiryu.
The final moment of the battle was approaching. A moment that would end everything. A moment that would seal Japan's fate at Midway. And what happened next would change the course of the war forever. The sky above the burning fleet roared with chaos. Smoke twisted upward in thick black columns, spreading across the horizon. The sea below reflected the fire, turning blue water into something darker, something alive with destruction. 3 carriers were already lost.
But 1 remained, Hiryu.
And aboard it, there was no panic, only urgency. Orders were shouted. Aircraft were moved into position. Fuel lines connected. Bombs secured. Pilots rushed toward their planes with one goal, to strike back. If Hiryu could destroy the American carriers, the battle could still turn. Engines roared as aircraft launched into the sky, climbing through smoke and heat. Far away, the American fleet moved cautiously. They knew the first strike had succeeded, but they also knew it wasn't over. Not yet. On board the USS Yorktown, crews worked fast. Damage from earlier attacks had been contained. Fires were controlled. The ship still moved, still fought, but it was exposed. And the Japanese pilots found it. They came in fast, low, precise. Bombs dropped. Explosions tore across the deck. The carrier shook violently as fire erupted again. Smoke poured into the sky. The ship slowed. This time, the damage was worse. Crew members scrambled through heat and smoke, fighting to keep the carrier alive. Water flooded compartments. Equipment failed. The ship leaned, wounded but not defeated. But the Japanese believed they had done enough. They turned back, returned to Hiryu, and reported success. They thought Yorktown was finished. They were wrong. While they celebrated a temporary victory, American aircraft were already regrouping. Refueled, rearmed, they pushed back into the sky. The search began again. The sky stretched wide and empty as they scanned the ocean below. Fuel was running low. Time was slipping away. Then they saw it, smoke rising in the distance. Not from the destroyed carriers, but from something still alive.
Hiryu.
The final target. The dive bombers adjusted formation, climbing into position. There would be no second chance. Below, Hiryu's deck was active. Crews prepared for another launch, unaware of what was coming. Then someone looked up. Tiny shapes appeared in the sky, growing larger, falling fast. Too fast. Alarms sounded across the carrier. Crew members scrambled. Guns turned upward. But it was already too late. The dive had begun. American aircraft plunged downward, engines screaming as gravity pulled them toward the target. Wind tore past their wings. Pilots held steady, locked in. Bombs released. Seconds stretched. Then impact. Explosions ripped across Hiryu's deck. Fire erupted instantly. Fuel ignited. Shockwaves tore through the ship. More bombs struck. More explosions followed. The deck shattered. Aircraft were destroyed where they stood. Crew members were thrown aside as flames spread uncontrollably. Chaos consumed everything. Inside the carrier, systems failed. Communication collapsed.
Control vanished.
Fire moved faster than any crew could contain. Hiryu was finished. The last carrier was gone. The battle was over. Silence followed, heavy and absolute. For carriers lost, a fleet shattered, a plan destroyed in just a few hours. The scale of it was impossible to ignore. Japan had not just lost ships. It had lost momentum, confidence, and control of the Pacific. Across the ocean, the impact was immediate. The balance of power shifted. For the first time, Japan was no longer unstoppable. They could be surprised. They could be hit. They could be defeated. And all it took was one opening. One perfectly timed strike. The American fleet did not celebrate loudly. They understood the cost. Aircraft were lost. Pilots were gone. Ships were damaged. The ocean had taken its share from both sides. But the difference was clear. One side could recover. The other could not. The loss of 4 carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, was something Japan could not replace quickly. Experienced pilots were gone. Skilled crews were lost. And in war, those losses mattered more than numbers. From that moment forward, every battle would feel different. Every mission would carry the weight of what had happened here. Because this was not just another victory. It was a turning point. The moment everything changed. The moment the unstoppable force was stopped. The ocean slowly returned to calm. Smoke faded into the sky. But the echoes remained. Explosions, falling aircraft, ships burning beneath the sun. And the memory of a single day when surprise changed the course of World War II forever.